I want to introduce you to the law offices of Vincent W. Davis at 888-888-6582. They're advocates for the rights of parents, grandparents, and guardians in juvenile dependency courts. Losing a child to a DCFS CPS social worker based on an anonymous call, complaint, or your ex-spouse is not only horrific, but it's commonplace. Everyone will agree that there's nothing more valuable than one's child. You cannot afford to fight this alone. Call the law offices of Vincent W. Davis at 888-888-6582. Connect with an attorney today. That's 888-888-6582. Get your kids back.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fight CPS, the Civil Rights Struggle. I'm your host, Amanda Cisco, and thank you for joining us tonight. Our guest is still getting situated, and she will join us later. But I was going to open up the floor today and let my viewers ask any questions you have about what happened in the accident, what it's like living with a brain injury, and that sort of stuff. And I was just going to share some things that I've learned from this experience. And then for our legal education portion tonight, we will be talking about ambiguous loss. And I am wearing my neck brace for the show tonight because I just found out today from my neurologist and my physical therapist that I actually have to keep this on at all times. So that's why this is on. I didn't know that until today. So that's why I have this. Better safe than sorry. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So I guess I will go ahead and open up the floor for you guys. So feel free to comment whatever questions you have, and I will answer them. And I'll go ahead and share what I have learned so far from this accident and, learning to live with a TBI. So on that, I got run over by a car back in April toward the end, and it was about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It was the day after my daughter's birthday. I was probably just getting some fresh air to clear my head because I was probably sad because I wasn't able to see my daughter on her birthday, and I know for a fact she's going through a hard time right now. I will go more into detail on that later. But I was run over by a car while I was walking in my neighborhood that night, and I instantly was put into a coma, and I ended up staying in the hospital for about 2 months. I had to go up north to this place that taught me how to walk again, and it has been pretty difficult, all in all, having to deal with all this stuff. So let's see. I guess I'll talk about what I've learned since this accident. So dealing with a brain injury is definitely a life-changing experience. Everything that I used to be able to do before is difficult for me now if I'm even able to do it at all. Like stuff I didn't even think about before. Like things like just walking, or just doing really simple stuff, not tripping over my supplies when I'm working in my cleaning business during the day, tripping over the cords, like getting dressed, all of it. It is so difficult. And I've also come to the realization, and this is not directed at anybody in particular, this is just in general, so please don't take anything I say personally, but I have come to understand that it is just impossible for me to have to deal with more than just one single thing at a time. Otherwise, it is so overwhelming that it becomes literally debilitating to me. And it's almost like I end up going backwards in my recovery. Like I start stuttering, I can't walk, like I walk even worse than I usually do now. It's just a lot for me to handle right now. So I can pretty much handle just one thing at a time, and that's it. And even then, that one thing at a time takes so much longer and is so much more difficult for me to do than it used to be. And I suppose this, goes for everybody in general. Because we tend to, and this is just what I think from what I've observed and learned, is that I feel like we tend to put demands and expectations on people without even realizing that we're doing that. Like, and it goes, there's two sides of that. For example, like in the cases that we're dealing with, we tend to place demands and expectations on these people that work for the city and the state because they're the ones who messed up this case and our family and our lives in the first place. And they absolutely should be held accountable for and answer to someone for the things that they are doing. However, on the flip side, I feel like on the contrary, we also tend to do that to, people who didn't do anything to warrant that being done. And what I mean by that is, like just going about our normal day, like how we deal with people without even thinking about it. We inadvertently place our demands and our expectations on them without even realizing it. And now that I have a brain injury and I have, come to see this for myself and what I've had to experience, I feel like sometimes I can't even exist without somebody demanding or expecting something out of me, when really what I should be focusing on right now is, like I said, one thing at a time, which is all that I can handle, and recovering, because that is the most important thing for me to be worried about right now, is getting better and learning how to live with this new injury. So any questions you guys might have, feel free to go ahead and ask them. I will see it pop up as soon as you type in a comment, and I will answer anything you guys would like to ask, and I'll be completely open about it. So that being said, and that goes for not just tonight's show, but that just goes for future shows as well. If you ever, have a question that you would like to ask, feel free to leave a comment and I will see it. And I will answer openly and honestly. So, so back to what I was just saying. I feel like, when we inadvertently, without realizing it, place, demands and expectations on someone, we're not usually doing it on purpose, and we're usually doing it without even realizing it. But at the end of the day, it can be pretty unfair for that person when we do that because, like I said before, it feels to them like they can't even just breathe and live their life without somebody demanding some of their time, something, out of their attention, or some act that they are expected to perform. And, for me, it can be quite debilitating sometimes. And, like I said, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody in particular. I'm just talking in general. This is just like there have been several experiences that, I've realized that this is happening. And, it just happens easily now. So, I guess when we're dealing with other people, there, on one hand, you have situations where someone did an action or said something that negatively affected your life or your case or your family, and they absolutely should answer for that and be held accountable. And you have every right to demand and expect, that from them. Doesn't necessarily mean that, they will end up having to answer for what they have done. Or, you might not get what you're expecting in the end out of it. And we just have to learn to deal with that accordingly. So anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to focus on right now. I haven't seen any comments come up yet, but yeah. Okay, so I don't see any questions yet, but as soon as I do, I will answer them for you guys. And we are still waiting on our guest to come on. She must still be trying to sign on, so we'll give her some time. So today for our educational portion, and I'm going to wait for our guest to come on before I talk about that, but when we do get to that portion, we're going to talk about ambiguous loss and what it is and what it means for people who are experiencing that. So just keep that in mind. Let me see. Okay. Now, one thing that I was sent earlier that, I would like to talk about while we wait for our guest is, oh wait, hold on, let me see. Okay, so there was an article sent to me earlier titled Re-Examining Social Worker Immunity in the Child Welfare Context. So social workers have this thing called qualified immunity. It's not absolute immunity. Judges have immunity, but social workers have what is called qualified immunity, which means so long as they are acting within the operation of law, they are immune from, any damage that is caused in the process. However, where that line is drawn is where, they go beyond the scope of their operation of the law. So if they choose to perjure themselves in an affidavit, even though they're, they have qualified immunity for that, perjury is still perjury. It is, in my jurisdiction, it is a class 5 felony. And, I feel like we really need to crack down on perjury in the court system. People, I think, should be terrified to lie under oath because of the consequences that they will face if they do that. And because, nothing is really done when people lie on the stand, people aren't really afraid of any of those consequences. Now, I do notice, so here's a little fun fact about me. Even before the accident, I have been into Korean dramas, K-dramas for short, for a few years now. And one thing that I've noticed in some of the shows that I've watched is there are a lot of similarities to our country and Korea, well, Southern Korea. For example, when they are in court, now another thing I've noticed is like the judges that hear a case, usually it's like a trial en banc, which means basically it's a trial ENBANC. I call it en banc. It's usually like a 3 to 5 panel judge that hears the case. So it's more than just one judge. And they all hear a case, they deliberate about it, and they come to a decision. And that could be a good thing. And also another thing that I've noticed about how Korean courts work is that when you are about to testify as a witness, you actually have to hold like a folder or something laminated. It's a statement that they laminate and give for you to hold up before you give your statement, where you basically have to put your hand on it, hold it open, and recite it word for word. And it goes something along the lines of, I promise to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Should I commit perjury, I understand that I might face the consequences of that, which is, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I feel like, we should probably be more like, how Korea runs their court system. Looks like we're still waiting for our guest. Oh, and I see that I have a question. Okay, so Deanna says they dismissed the PERMC sunset hearing tomorrow. If I'm complying with them, they should comply with me. What should I expect? And when will this be over? Okay, so Deanna, I am not a licensed attorney. So anything about the law that I talk about is not legal advice. It is simply legal education. And I don't know a lot of details about your case, and every case is different. So I can't really help you too much on that right now without knowing a little bit more. But from what you said, just because you cooperate with them, which is what they expect out of you, doesn't necessarily mean they will cooperate in return. In fact, a lot of parents are under the false impression that, oh, if I just cooperate and do everything that they ask me to do, everything will be okay. This will be over. And that's not necessarily the truth. So something that we were going to talk about for our legal education portion tonight was what to do when CPS comes knocking at your door, or DCFS, depending on what state you live in. So first off, never sign anything without showing it to your lawyer first if you have one, without reading it. Just in general, I suggest you don't sign anything, no matter how much they pressure you. Because at the end of the day, these people are going to do whatever the hell they want to do. And they don't care. They don't care how it affects these families, these parents, these children. It doesn't matter to them. Because there is something that they're getting out of holding these cases against families. And especially when, most of the time these families have not done anything wrong, let alone anything to warrant justification of these officials' behavior that is on these cases. And it's really, to me, that's really unfortunate. So when I say don't sign anything, that also means you don't have to let them in your home. You don't have to give them P tests. And of course, they're going to try to use all of these things against you. So a smart way to, CYA, so to speak, which stands for cover your ASS. A good way to do that, well, of course, when you refuse to sign something, all you have to do is say, you don't have my consent. I'm not signing this. I haven't done anything wrong. And as far as the urinalysis, you can go get your own P tests or hair follicle, whatever's done, without having to go through the state agencies that oftentimes are in bed with these workers and these judges and these attorneys. Like, everybody knows each other. And I guess, I wonder where our guest is. I'm surprised she's not on yet. But anyway, sorry, I just lost my train of thought, which happens a lot since this brain injury. My short-term memory is not good at all. So that's very easy to do. Sometimes I will lose my train of thought in the middle of me saying a sentence, and I'll be like, wait, what was the question again? So all you can do about it sometimes is laugh, I guess. But I was saying, I would suggest, as somebody who has gone through a CPS case, I have not personally had any experiences, but I have heard lots of stories about how false positives for these urinalyses are very common, especially in organizations or entities that are quite literally in bed with these social workers and are not looking out for your best interests at any time. So try to get your own drug test that they request done through an independent person, that you can go to, not their person. And don't let them into your home. If they knock on your door or leave a card or whatever, definitely lawyer up immediately. Record every conversation that you have with them, but make sure to look up the recording laws in your state. So in my state, it is a one-party state where you don't have to have their consent or their knowledge when you're recording them. You just have to simply be a part of the conversation. But it's not like that in all states. Some states you have to let them know and you have to get their permission before you can record them. So although it's not illegal for me to record somebody without their knowledge, and it's usually just conversations that I can go back and listen to just to make sure I didn't miss anything, or just to CYA if I'm talking with an adverse party, or something like that. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought again. But yes, they don't have to have knowledge or give their consent to be recorded in my state. But however, if they don't give their consent or know that they're being recorded, it's usually not admissible in court. So that's a general rule to go by. Without somebody's knowledge or permission, you usually can't bring it in court as evidence. But like I said, definitely double check the laws for recording in your state to make sure you know what they are, because they're different in every state. So don't sign anything. Do not let them into your house. Record them if you can, but make sure you know the laws in your state when it comes to recording. Let me see if there's anything else. Don't let them speak to your children without you being there ever. They're going to ask you to. They're going to try to show up at your school and take your kid to another room where they proceed to ask them all kinds of inappropriate questions, leading questions. Most of it's not even recorded, so there's no proof about what was said. Your children's words will be twisted and used against them and you, which is not fair, and it's not helpful to the child at all. And so on. So definitely do your research when you can. Now I do have to end exactly at 1 hour tonight. And I started a minute late, and so I apologize for that. But tomorrow I have to wake up super early and be on the road because I have to get a CT scan done on my brain. Because last I had a CT scan done, my brain was still bleeding, but just a little bit. Now, at first, my brain was bleeding in 4 different places. I don't know if it was still bleeding in all those places last time they did a scan. They expect the bleeding to stop on its own. But when I was in the hospital, I asked the nurse to go over what injuries I had sustained. And he just had this look of bewilderment on his face when he was going over it in the computer. And he looked at me and he was like, yeah, there is no way, based on your injuries that you sustained, that she was going 25 miles an hour in that neighborhood that night. And then he proceeded to tell me that there is no way that I should have survived, let alone survived without being permanently wheelchair bound, paralyzed, that kind of thing. So I was definitely very grateful for that. But it's still quite a difficult process to get used to this, and learn how to live now that I have this brain injury, because it has virtually changed every aspect of my life in a negative way. Like, everything is more difficult for me now. Things that I didn't even think about before are like nearly impossible to do now, if I can even do it at all. So that's definitely difficult. But yeah, like I was saying before, we tend to place demands and expectations on people around us without even realizing that we're doing it. And like I said, this isn't focused at anyone specifically. I'm just talking in general here. But since the injury that I sustained, I have come to realize this, because it has been quite debilitating for me when I get very stressed out, and it's like, it's not because anyone did anything wrong, per se, but it's just, learning how to live with a brain injury has made everything extremely difficult for me. And, it sucks. It's really unfortunate that I have to live a life like this now. And I can only hope that it will get better down the road, but I have to, understand and come to terms with the possibility that I might be like this for the rest of my life. Let's see. Looks like I have another comment. It makes me think to go and get a referral to receive preventive service and family therapy. So Holly Jolly, what do you mean by preventive service? And well, I know what family therapy is, but what do you mean by preventive service? I'm just curious. Because it's always good to have family therapy regardless. You just have to be careful with who your therapist is. Definitely always do your research. Make sure you know the names of people, do a little bit of background checking on them. Like, you don't have to do an official background check on these people. You can choose to do so. There was nothing wrong with that. More kudos to you if you do. But, just look into how long they've been in the profession, what kind of accomplishments they've done, who they affiliate themselves with, that kind of thing, because you never know. You just really never know who you're dealing with. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's something that we should always try to be aware of as much as we can in order to protect ourselves should anything happen in the future. Because a lot of these people, like these schools and stuff, are like, are basically a farming ground for child trafficking. And it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. And all it takes is a call to CPS from a toxic ex, a social worker at the school, somebody at the doctor's office when you just went in for a regular checkup for your kid, or they had just a minor fever, which is completely normal. And next thing you know, they're trying to take your kids away. And a lot of people never see it coming. And a lot of times, a lot of these cases are preying upon the less fortunate who have low income, low education, don't necessarily have the resources to fight for themselves. And they don't know their rights. They don't know that you can represent yourself in a case like this, although it's not recommended, because it's important to be able to remain objective and not get overly emotionally involved, where on the contrary, nobody's going to fight for your case or care about your case as much as you do. So just learning to find the balance in that, if you are representing yourself or just with life in general. It's never good to have too much of your emotions involved in anything. But it's also beneficial to be passionate about whatever it is that you're working on in your life. Let's see. We have another comment. Let me read it. What's a sunset hearing? It's been a year. Educational stuff you can point to. I'm always doing my homework for the situation I'm in. Deanna, that is really good to do your homework. It's really important. So that's good that you're doing that. So something, I guess, so we have to end the show in about 30 minutes. And I guess our guest isn't coming on tonight. Something must have happened, but I have to focus on, like I said, I can only do one thing at a time. So I have to focus on the show right this second. So I can't see what's going on with her. Okay. Oh, hey, Janessa. Welcome. Glad you were able to join us.
Hi.
I didn't even see you log on. I was just like, I wonder what happened to our guest, but I can't text right now. How are you doing?
Well, I'm here in the flesh.
Well, thank you so much for joining. I'm glad you're able to make it. I was just thinking it's feeling a little bit cold in here. In case I mixed up your name with my guest from last week, what is your name?
My name's Janessa.
Okay. And Janessa, what brought you into CPS in the first place? Do you have a case? Do you not want to talk about it?
It's not
right
active.
now? It's not active. Okay. Well, you don't have to give details about it right now if you don't want to. But tell me a little bit about your case, what you're comfortable telling.
Well, hello?
Yes, I'm here. You're breaking up a little bit, it looks like.
Amanda.
Hold on. Can you hear me now? Hello? Are you here? Okay, looks like we have lost our guest momentarily, but I'm sure she'll be back. So let's give it a few minutes. Give me just 1 second, guys, while we wait for our guest to come back on. Okay. Sorry, guys, bear with me. I'm going to try to figure out what happened. All right. So I just texted our producer to see where our guest went. So we'll just give that a couple minutes. But yeah, that kind of goes into what I was saying earlier is, as you can see, everything is difficult for me now. It takes me forever just to send an email, like just to really do anything. And it can get pretty frustrating sometimes. So please try to bear with me. Let's see if she responds. I'll give it 1 or 2 minutes and then we'll move on. But while we wait, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to type them in a comment. And I'm going to read over the comments right now. Okay, so someone commented, how do we handle what they tell us to calm down as they rip our hearts out at a removal? So to answer that, how do you handle when they tell you to calm down as they rip your heart out at a removal? There are really no words to answer that. I mean, it's going to be painful no matter what. And it's wrong that this is even happening to these families in the first place. And all these laws are being broken in the process. And, the people that are doing these evil acts just don't seem to give a single crap. And that's really bothersome for a lot of people. And I wish that more people would, come to realize what's really going on here. But oftentimes, unfortunately, unless you have gone through this yourself, you usually don't know. You're not aware that this is even happening. Let's see. Let's read another comment. My kids are all being abused by the grandma, and the foster agency won't report anything. The judge retired. We don't know who we getting next week, Wednesday, for court. We have no ACS worker now. I'm not sure what an ACS worker is. I'm sorry to hear that the foster agency isn't reporting anything about the abuse by the grandmother. I know that's probably so difficult for you to have to deal with right now. There are things that can be done in that kind of situation. I would have to look into it more before I can share what those things are. You are legally allowed to call in a welfare check on your children, even if they're in foster care. So that's always a possibility. And the same person also said, it makes me think to go and get a referral to receive preventative service and family therapy. Let's see what else. Okay, so that's everything for right now. And our guest is still not back on. We have 20 minutes left in the show. So any questions you guys might have, feel free to ask them. And if I can answer them, I absolutely will. Okay, so not sure what happened to our guest. I hope she's coming back on to join us. Look into it for a second, if you guys will bear with me. Okay, so I just got an update about our guest. It looks like her computer is not connected right now, so I might have to bring her on speakerphone. And in order to do that, I will have to switch to the live video on my computer and call her from my phone. So I'll have to disconnect from the show and then come back on. So I guess I'll go ahead and do that. And just stand by, guys. I'll be right back. Thank you so much.